Chapter 1, The Signal in the Dark. The Dominion's retreat was not silence. It was a whisper that clawed at every sensor array across the fleet. Admiral Holt stood on the command deck of the Resolute, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Dominion's first wave had been shattered, their cruisers burning in the void, but the lingering transmission pulsed like a heartbeat. It was not a distress call, it was a promise. 72 hours, Holt said, voice steady, carrying across the bridge. That's all the time we have before the main force arrives. Every ship, every crew, every civilian in the system will live or die by what we do now. Commander Reyes leaned over the console, jaw tight. We've got half our missile reserves left, railgun slugs down to 30%. If the Dominion comes in strength, we'll be fighting with knives against warhammers. Holt's gaze didn't waver. Then we sharpen the knives until they cut deeper than the enemy expects. The Dominion were arrogant, their empire built on overwhelming force and ritualized conquest. They believed humanity's resistance was a fluke, a desperate stand that would crumble under the weight of their armada. Holt intended to prove them wrong. Across the system, fragments of humanity's fleet limped into formation. Ironclad had lost its port batteries, the Vigilant carried scars along its hull where plasma had chewed through armor, and dozens of smaller frigates bore wounds that would take weeks to repair. They didn't have weeks, they had hours. Admiral Reyes said, lowering her voice, the Dominion's signal is not just a countdown, they're broadcasting coordinates, a rally point. Holt studied the data. The coordinates were deep in the void, beyond the system's edge, a place where no human ship had reason to linger. They want us to know where they'll gather, they want us to watch. Psychological warfare, Reyes muttered. They're daring us to strike, Holt's lips thinned. Baiting us into overextending, either way we'll use it. He turned to the communications officer. Patch me through to Fleet Command. Moments later, the faces of captains and commanders filled the hologrid. Some looked exhausted, others defiant, all waiting for Holt's orders. The Dominion believes we're broken, Holt began, voice calm, deliberate. They believe our victory today was luck. They believe their armada will crush us in 3 days. They are wrong. We will not wait passively for annihilation. We will strike first. We will bleed them before they cross our threshold. A murmur rippled through the grid. Captain Duran of the Ironclad spoke up. Admiral, with respect, our ships are crippled. If we push into the void, we risk losing what little strength we have left. Holt's reply was steel. If we wait, we die on their terms. If we move, we choose the battlefield. Humanity has survived because we adapt, because we fight smarter. The Dominion has never faced an enemy that refuses to kneel. That is our advantage. Silence followed, heavy but charged. One by one, the captains nodded. Reyes exhaled. So what's the plan? Holt gestured to the tactical display. We'll form a stealth screen. Frigates will deploy sensor decoys along the system's edge. Our cruisers will mask emissions and drift into the void. We'll shadow the Dominion's rally point, gather intelligence, and strike when their formation is vulnerable. We don't need to destroy them outright. We need to cripple their logistics, force them to fight us hungry and disorganized. The communications officer hesitated. Admiral, if they detect us, they won't, Holt cut in. Not if we move like shadows. Humanity's strength isn't brute force. It's the ability to vanish, to strike unseen, to make the enemy doubt every sensor reading. We will turn the void itself against them. The order spread like wildfire. Crews scrambled, engineers patched hulls with improvised plating, and pilots prepared for silent runs. The fleet shifted from battered survivors to predators cloaked in darkness. Hours later, the Resolute led the formation into the black. Engines throttled low, emissions masked, the ships became ghosts drifting beyond the reach of New Avalon's light. The Dominion's signal pulsed ahead, arrogant and unguarded. On the bridge, Holt stood unmoving, eyes locked on the void. They think we're prey, he said quietly. Let's show them what happens when prey learns to hunt. The fleet slid deeper into shadow, humanity's duel with the Armada already begun. The countdown ticked, but Holt no longer saw 72 hours as a death sentence. He saw it as opportunity. The void swallowed them whole, and in that silence, humanity prepared its most dangerous weapon, patience sharpened into a blade. Chapter 2, Silent Knives in the Dark. The Dominion's rally point loomed ahead, a cluster of warships arrayed with the arrogance of a predator certain no prey dared approach. Their formation was tight but not disciplined. Confidence had bred carelessness. On the Resolute's bridge, Admiral Holt studied the tactical overlay. The Dominion's logistics carriers pulsed like fat arteries in the void, their supply chains exposed. He leaned forward, voice low but sharp. Target their lifeblood. Cut the carriers and the Armada starves. Commander Reyes, his operations chief, nodded. We'll need precision. One misstep and their sensors will light us up. Holt's gaze never wavered. Then we don't misstep. The fleet drifted closer, hulls wrapped in emission-dampening shrouds. Every crewman knew silence was survival. Engineers whispered across comms, adjusting reactor bleed-offs to mimic cosmic background noise. Pilots guided their ships with thruster bursts so faint they barely registered. Humanity had become a shadow, threading the void with surgical intent. Minion ships glittered with arrogance, beacons blazing, comm traffic unencrypted, their commanders too certain of superiority to imagine stealth predators stalking them. Holt's lips tightened. They broadcast their strength like fools. That arrogance is our weapon. Ray's tapped the console. Admiral, we've mapped their resupply pattern. Carriers rotate every 6 hours. If we strike during the handoff, confusion will ripple through their chain. Good, Holt said. Confusion is the first cut. Fear is the second. Hunger will finish them. The order spread. Strike teams armed their stealth craft, sleek vessels stripped of ornament, built for one purpose: infiltration. Weapons officers loaded kinetic penetrators, warheads designed not for spectacle but for crippling precision. Lieutenant Mara Vey, leading the first strike wing, stood in the hangar bay, helmet under her arm, her voice carried across the deck. We're not here to win glory. We're here to make the Dominion bleed where they think they're invincible. Remember that when you see their carriers burn. Her pilots answered with a single word: understood. Minutes later, the strike wings detached, vanishing into the black. No engine trails, no comm chatter, only the silent glide of machines built to erase themselves from existence. On the bridge, Holt watched their progress. They'll never see it coming, he murmured. Reyes glanced at him. And if they do, then we fight like ghosts. Even in death will haunt them. The Dominion carriers loomed larger, their hulls bristling with docking arms and cargo bays. Automated drones ferried supplies between ships, oblivious to the hunters closing in. Vey's wing slipped beneath the carrier's sensor arc, hugging the blind zone created by its own exhaust plume. Her voice was calm, clinical. Target lock acquired. Firing sequence in 3, 2, 1. The penetrators launched, silent, invisible darts streaking across the void. They struck with surgical precision, ripping through fuel reservoirs and reactor conduits. Explosions blossomed inside the carrier, muted flashes swallowed by the void. Alarms flared across the Dominion fleet. Confusion rippled instantly. Commanders barked orders, sensors scrambled, formations shifted. But the humans were already gone, their strike wings dissolving back into shadow. On the Resolute, Holt's eyes narrowed. First cut delivered, now we wait for the wound to fester. The Dominion's comm traffic spiked, frantic and disorganized. Supply chains fractured, resupply schedules collapsed. Holt's analysts fed him the data. Fuel reserves dwindling, munitions delayed, morale shaken. Reyes leaned closer. Admiral, they'll tighten defenses now. Next strike won't be so easy. Holt's reply was cold steel. Then we sharpen the blade. Every defense they raise is another resource drained. We don't need easy, we need inevitable. Hours passed. The Dominion scrambled to restore order, but their arrogance had left them unprepared for an enemy that fought with patience instead of brute force. Their commanders argued, their fleets hesitated, their carriers limped. In the silence of the void, humanity's fleet waited, cloaked and unseen. Holt stood unmoving, a sentinel in the dark. They think shadows are empty, he said quietly. But shadows are where hunters live. The countdown ticked. 71 hours remained. The duel had only begun. The hum of the Resolute's cloaked drive was a low thrum under the bridge's ambient noise, the tactical hollow-table glowing with the Dominion fleet's scattered, panicked formation. The timestamp in the corner of the display read 23:47 UTC, 58 hours, 12 minutes remaining on the operational countdown the Dominion still assumed was a doomsday weapon timer. 300,000 kilometers out, aboard the Dominion flagship Worldrender, High Warlord Vraxthal's clawed fist dented the durasteel of his command dais. Latest damage report scrolled across his display. 3 of his 5 fleet carriers had lost 42% of their usable fuel reserves from the first human strike. 2 resupply convoys bound for the forward operating base had vanished from all sensors, presumed destroyed. His second-in-command, Sub-Warlord Kelthas, lined in, his chitinous mandibles clicking with agitation. Standard sensor sweeps return nothing, Warlord. The human vessels vanished the second they dropped below lightspeed. Their stealth coding is unmatched. Vraxthal roared, the sound echoing across the bridge. Fan out all available escort craft in a 500,000-kilometer search grid. No vessel returns without a contact. If they want to hide, we root them out. On the Resolute, Ensign Kalen Voss, 22, fresh out of the academy with a specialization in sensor countermeasures, let out a quiet breath as she updated the tactical display. Admiral, they just burned 8.2% of their total fleet maneuvering fuel to deploy that search grid. Their capital ships are now drifting without active sensors to conserve power for the next 6 hours. Their escort screen is stretched so thin a child could slip through. Reyes leaned over her shoulder, nodding at the highlighted Dominion formation. They're expending more resources on the hunt than we spent on the first strike. At this rate, their fuel reserves hit critical in 36 hours. Their frontline capital ships will be dead in the water before they ever reach Earth. Holt stood unmoving by the viewport, his hands clasped behind his back, his face unreadable. Let them hunt. Every hour they spend searching for us is an hour they don't spend preparing to invade. Voss's fingers flew across her console a moment later, and she looked up, her eyes widening slightly. Admiral, I'm picking up an unregistered sensor blip near the Dominion's forward ammo depot on Kael'thas V. It's a supply tender, unescorted, carrying live plasma warheads for their frontline battleships. No escort, no active scans. A faint smile tugged at the corner of Holt's mouth. That's a gift. Commander Rourke, take the Wraith and disable the tender's engines. Plant a single thermite charge on its magazine, set to detonate in 20 minutes, right as their search wing passes through its flight path. Do not engage unless engaged. Return before they know you are there. Copy that, Admiral, came Rourke's calm voice over the comms. 20 minutes later, the Dominion supply tender exploded in a silent flash of orange light, the blast tearing through 3 of the search wing's scout craft and sending shrapnel slicing into the hull of the light cruiser Veilrend, disabling its portside weapons array. On the world render, Vraxthel smashed his fist into the display so hard the holodable flickered. All ships burn maximum thrust to the tender's last known position. Divert all repair crews from the carriers to patch the Veilrend. I want every available fighter in that sector now. On the Resolute, Reyes whistled low. They just burned another 4% of their remaining fuel rushing to the blast site. Their carrier repair crews are now tied up fixing the Veilrend. Their escort screen is even more spread out. We couldn't have planned that better if we tried. A sharp alert blared from Voss's console a second later and her face went tight. Admiral, the Wraith's engine bleed was picked up by a Dominion passive sensor array for 0.3 seconds before they cloaked. They almost had a lock. Holt's jaw tightened. They're adapting. Next strike won't be a surprise. He turned to Reyes. Push the ammo depot strike forward to 12 hours. Target their main ordnance storage bunkers on Kael'thas V. Leave no margin for error. Reyes frowned. Admiral, they'll have a full picket screen around that moon now. We'll lose the element of stealth. Holt's gaze was cold as he looked back at the tactical display, where the Dominion fleet's fuel reserves now glowed a dull red at 61% remaining. Good, let them dig their own graves. They're so busy chasing shadows they won't see the blade until it's already in their ribs. The countdown on the corner of the display ticked down to 57 hours, 44 minutes. Somewhere in the void, the Dominion's search wings continued to scream over open comms, frustrated, angry, wasting every scrap of power they had left hunting an enemy that had already won. Chapter 4, Episode 18, Shadows in the Void. Humanity's stealth duel against the alien Armada ASF. The tactical chamber aboard the Resolute was silent except for the hum of processors and the occasional click of a console. Admiral Holt stood with his arms folded, eyes locked on the shifting holographic projection of Kael'thas V. The Dominion's ordnance bunkers glowed like malignant tumors across the moon's surface, each one shielded by overlapping defense grids and a swarm of picket ships. Status of the strike wing, Holt asked, voice flat. Reyes checked his slate. Wraith Squadron is cycling through stealth calibration. Phantom Group reports 2 birds down for maintenance, but they'll be ready in 10 hours. Total strike force, 24 craft, all cloak capable. Enough, Holt muttered. Commander Voss leaned forward, her tone sharp. Admiral, Dominion sensor arrays are tightening their sweeps. They've shifted to staggered pulse scans, less efficient but harder to predict. If we push in too early, we risk exposure before the bunkers are hit. Holt's gaze didn't waver. Exposure is acceptable, failure is not. The words hung heavy. Reyes exhaled slowly, then tapped the display to highlight Dominion fuel reserves. They're bleeding themselves dry. Every time they surge their pickets, they burn another fraction of their tanks. 61% left and dropping. If we force them to chase us during the strike, they'll cut their own throats. Voss's jaw tightened. And if they catch us mid-run, Holt turned, his expression carved from stone. Then we remind them why humanity survived the first contact wars. We don't panic, we don't scatter, we strike and we vanish. Hours later, the strike wing assembled in the launch bay. Pilots moved with precise efficiency, helmets tucked under arms, voices low but steady. Lieutenant Kalen, youngest of Wraith Squadron, glanced at the shimmering outline of his craft, the cloak field rippling faintly like heat haze. Stealth calibration reads green, his tech reported. Kalen nodded, sliding into the cockpit. His comm crackled with Reyes' voice. Listen up, Wraiths. Dominion thinks they've mapped our cloak signatures. They're wrong. You'll ride the bleed line, keep your emissions under threshold. If you spike, you're dead. If you hold, you're ghosts. A chorus of acknowledgments followed, clipped and professional. The Resolute's bridge dimmed as the strike countdown reached 0. Holt stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back. Launch, he ordered. The hangar bay opened and 24 cloaked fighters slipped into the void, invisible shadows against the stars. Kael'thas V loomed ahead, its surface scarred by centuries of Dominion fortification. Defense satellites rotated in precise arcs, their sensor cones sweeping like blades. Picket ships drifted in layered formations, engines pulsing faintly. Kalen's HUD flickered as the cloak strained against a passing scan. His breath slowed, heartbeat steady. Wraith 7 holding, he whispered. Maintain vector, Ray's voice cut in. No deviations. The squadron threaded through the gaps, each pilot trusting the others to hold formation. One misstep, one flare of emissions, and the Dominion would swarm. On the Resolute, Voss's console lit with warning glyphs. Admiral Dominion Patrol Wing is shifting course. They're vectoring toward our strike corridor. Ray swore under his breath. They're guessing. They don't have a lock. Holt's eyes narrowed. Then let them guess. Push the strike forward by 3 minutes. No hesitation. The bunkers came into view, massive structures buried beneath armored plating, shielded by overlapping defense grids. Kalen's targeting reticle locked onto his assigned bunker. Payload armed, he reported. Confirm across the wing, Ray's ordered. 23 voices echoed confirmation. Execute, the void erupted. Stealth payload streaked silently toward the moon, invisible until impact. Shields flared, then shattered under the precision strikes. Explosions rippled across Kael'thas V, each detonation tearing through ordnance storage. Firestorms blossomed, shockwaves ripping bunkers apart. Dominion comms lit up instantly, panicked voices flooding the spectrum. Bunker breach, Sector 12 collapsing, fuel chain reaction, containment failing. Kalen pulled hard on his stick, cloak straining as he banked away from the inferno. His HUD screamed proximity alerts, Dominion pickets surging toward the strike vector. Wraith Squadron, evasive pattern Delta, Rays barked. The fighters scattered into pre-planned routes, each one vanishing into the void. Dominion sensors clawed at empty space, chasing phantoms. On the Resolute, Voss's console flared again. Admiral Dominion fuel reserves just dropped to 58%. Their containment crews are burning power trying to stabilize the bunkers. Rays grinned, sharp and cold. They're bleeding themselves dry faster than we projected. Holt's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display, where Dominion formations twisted in disarray. They think they're hunting us. In truth, they're digging their own graves. Kalen's fighter slipped back into cloak range, engines whispering. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was steady. Strike complete, payload confirmed, Dominion response chaotic. Ray's reply was calm, almost detached. Good work, Wraith 7, hold vector until rendezvous. The Dominion fleet scrambled, picket wings surging in blind fury. Their comms were a storm of rage and confusion, commanders shouting over one another, demanding answers, demanding vengeance, but the void remained silent. Humanity's strike wing had already vanished, leaving only fire and ruin behind. On the Resolute, Holt finally allowed himself a thin smile. They're arrogant, they believe brute force wins wars, will teach them otherwise. Every strike drains them. Every chase wastes them. By the time they realize the truth, they'll have nothing left to fight with. The countdown on the display ticked down to 45 hours, 12 minutes. Somewhere in the void, Dominion search wings screamed into the dark, burning fuel, burning time, chasing shadows that had already slipped beyond their reach. And humanity waited, calm and patient, the blade poised for the next strike. Chapter 5, Episode 18. Shadows in the void. The Dominion fleet's fury had not cooled. Their warships prowled the void like predators denied prey, engines burning hot, sensor arrays stretched to their limits. Yet every sweep returned only silence. Humanity's strike wing had vanished again, leaving wreckage and humiliation behind. On the Resolute, the command deck was a study in controlled tension. Tactical displays glowed with shifting vectors, Dominion formations plotted in red arcs, human strike wings in ghostly blue. Commander Holt leaned forward, eyes narrowing as he traced the Dominion's erratic pursuit patterns. They're bleeding propellant at a rate they can't sustain, Holt said, voice clipped. Every blind sweep costs them. Every wasted burn is another nail in their coffin. Captain Reyes stood beside him, arms folded, gaze steady. They'll keep thrashing until exhaustion sets in. Pride won't let them admit they're being played. A comms officer turned, voice sharp. Dominion carrier group shifting course. They're tightening their net around Sector Delta 9. Reyes' lips curved into a cold smile. They think we're hiding there. Good, let them choke themselves. Kalen's fighter, Wraith 7, drifted in cloak range, sensors tuned to the Dominion's frantic chatter. His breathing was steady now, nerves hardened by repetition. He spoke into the calm, tone precise. Dominion intercept wings converging, fuel expenditure rising. Their formation is unstable, command channels overloaded. Holt's reply came instantly. Maintain shadow position. Confirm if their carrier launches reserves. Kalen adjusted his scope, eyes narrowing as Dominion hangar bays flared open. Fighters spilled out in ragged waves, pilots screaming for vengeance across comms. Confirmed, Kalen said. Reserves deployed. Their cohesion is collapsing. They're chasing ghosts. The Dominion Admiral's voice cut through the chaos, transmitted across their fleet, harsh, imperious, dripping with fury. Find them, humanity's vermin will not escape, burn every sector if you must. But beneath the bluster, cracks widened. Sub-commanders argued openly, accusing one another of incompetence, demanding clarity where none existed. Their arrogance had become a weapon turned against them. Reyes turned to Holt, voice low but firm. They're unraveling faster than projected. If we strike now, we can cripple their logistics. Holt's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display. Not yet, let them bleed more. Every wasted sortie drains their reserves. When we hit, it will be decisive. The countdown on the operations board ticked down, 43 hours, 7 minutes. Humanity's timetable was precise, merciless. In the Dominion fleet, frustration boiled into recklessness. A cruiser squadron broke formation, engines flaring as they surged into the void, desperate to catch shadows. Their sensors screamed false positives, chasing phantom echoes planted by human decoys. On the Resolute, Rays watched the display with cold satisfaction. They're splitting their force. That squadron is isolated. Holt's eyes narrowed. Opportunity. Wraithwing, prepare strike vectors. Silent insertion. No comms until payload delivery. Kalen's voice came back, calm and steady. Acknowledged. Wraithwing moving to intercept. The void swallowed them whole. Cloaked fighters slipped past Dominion patrols, engines whispering, hulls masked against detection. Kalen's hands moved with surgical precision, guiding his craft into strike position. Through his scope, the Dominion cruisers loomed, vast, arrogant constructs bristling with weapons. Their shields pulsed, their comms snarled with confusion. Kalen's voice was a whisper. Target locked, payload armed. The strike wing moved as one. Torpedoes slipped free, cloaked until impact. A heartbeat later, the void erupted in fire. Dominion cruisers shuddered, shields collapsing under the sudden assault. Hulls split, flames venting into the dark. Kalen's voice remained steady. Strike complete. Dominion squadron neutralized. On the Resolute, Holt allowed himself a thin smile. Textbook, they'll scream vengeance, but every loss drives them deeper into chaos. Ray's tone was colder. They'll learn too late. By the time they realize the truth, their empire will already be ash. The comms officer spoke again, urgency in his voice. Dominion command channels spiking. They're demanding immediate retaliation, fleet cohesion dropping further. Holt leaned back, gaze hard. Good, let them waste themselves. Every chase, every blind strike, every wasted burn, it all leads to the same end. In the Dominion flagship, the Admiral's rage reached its peak. His voice thundered across the fleet, demanding obedience, demanding blood. But his commanders hesitated, their confidence eroded by failure after failure. Humanity's shadow war was working. The Dominion's arrogance had become their weakness, their fury, their undoing. On the Resolute, silence reigned for a moment. Then Holt spoke, voice calm, deliberate. They think brute force wins wars, will teach them otherwise. Every strike drains them, every chase wastes them. By the time they see the truth, they'll have nothing left to fight with. The countdown ticked down, 42 hours, 51 minutes. And in the void, Dominion's search wings screamed into the dark, burning fuel, burning time, chasing shadows that had already slipped beyond their reach. Humanity waited, patient and cold, the blade poised for the next strike. Chapter 6, Episode 18, Shadows in the Void. Humanity's stealth duel against the alien Armada ASF. The Dominion fleet burned across the void, their formation ragged, their discipline fraying. What had once been a wall of unbreakable arrogance now resembled a mob of warships, each captain desperate to prove loyalty, each maneuver driven by fear of reprisal rather than strategy. On the Resolute, the bridge was silent except for the hum of systems and the occasional clipped report. Holt stood at the tactical display, eyes fixed on the shifting patterns of enemy movement. Fuel expenditure rising, the comms officer noted. Dominion wings are scattering, chasing phantom contacts. They're bleeding propellant at unsustainable rates. Rays leaned forward, voice sharp. They're hunting ghosts. Every false trail we lay costs them another burn. They'll cripple themselves before they ever find us. Holt's tone was measured, almost surgical. That's the plan, keep the shadows moving. Let them believe we're everywhere. By the time they realize the truth, their fleet will be hollowed out. The countdown ticked, 41 hours, 12 minutes. In the Dominion flagship, Admiral Carveck's fury was volcanic. His command deck trembled under the weight of his voice. Cowards, you will obey, you will strike. Humanity hides in the dark, but the Dominion does not falter. His officers exchanged uneasy glances. The failures had mounted, convoys ambushed, patrols annihilated, supply lines severed. Every attempt to corner the humans had ended in humiliation. One captain dared to speak. Admiral, our fuel reserves are thinning. If we continue blind pursuit, we risk immobility. Carveck's glare was lethal. Then you will crawl through the void if you must. Dominion ships do not retreat. Humanity will be crushed, even if it costs us every drop of fuel. The silence that followed was not obedience, it was fear. Back aboard the Resolute, Holt studied the Dominion flagship's transmissions. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried the weight of certainty. They're unraveling. The Admiral's rage is consuming his fleet. He's driving them into exhaustion. Ray's reply was cold steel. That's when we strike, not before, not after, when they're blind, when their tanks are dry, when their crews are desperate. The tactical officer interjected. Sir, Dominion search wings are pushing deeper into the nebula. Their sensors are scattering beams in every direction. They're burning through reserves at triple the normal rate. Holt nodded once. Good, keep feeding them false echoes. Every wasted scan is another nail in their coffin. Hours passed. The Dominion fleet fractured further, wings chasing phantom signals across the void. Some ships broke formation entirely, desperate to claim a kill that would restore their honor. Others hesitated, unwilling to risk another humiliation. On the Resolute, the crew watched with clinical detachment. Dominion cohesion dropping below 50%, the comms officer reported. Command channels are chaos, captains arguing, refusing orders. Ray's lips curved into something colder than a smile. They're eating themselves alive. Holt's gaze remained fixed on the display. Not yet, let them burn, let them waste. When the moment comes, we'll cut the heart out of their fleet. The countdown ticked 39 hours, 3 minutes. In the Dominion flagship, Admiral Karvek's fury reached a breaking point. He slammed his fist against the command console, voice echoing like thunder. You will obey, you will hunt them. Humanity is nothing but vermin hiding in shadows. We are the Dominion, we do not fail. But his words rang hollow. His commanders had seen too many defeats, too many humiliations. The fear of humanity's unseen hand gnawed at them. Every shadow could be a trap, every silence could be death. The Dominion's arrogance had become their weakness, their fury had become their undoing. On the Resolute, Holt finally spoke, voice calm, deliberate, lethal. They think brute force wins wars, will teach them otherwise. Every strike drains them, every chase wastes them. By the time they see the truth, they'll have nothing left to fight with. Ray's eyes were cold fire. And when they're broken, when their empire is bleeding out in the dark, we'll deliver the final blow. The bridge fell silent, the weight of inevitability pressing down on every soul aboard. The countdown ticked 38 hours, 27 minutes, and in the void, Dominion's search wings screamed into the dark, burning fuel, burning time, chasing shadows that had already slipped beyond their reach. Humanity waited patient and cold, the blade poised for the next strike. The countdown ticked 38 hours, 27 minutes. Dominion Patrol Wing Commander Vrak leaned into the Scourge's comms array, the hum of the ship's straining thrusters vibrating through his boots. The latest ping had cut out 200,000 clicks deep in the Uwit cloud, another dead end. Command, Scourge actual, Vrak snapped, jaw tight, another decoy. Signature matches the human buoy tech we pulled off the wreckage at Proxima B. Request permission to break off sweep, return to main fleet for refuel. Admiral Karvek's voice crackled back, raw with fury. Denied, you will continue the sweep. Humanity is hiding in that cloud. Flush them out or I will have your command stripped and you posted to the frontline bombardment wings. Vrak's executive officer, Lyra, muted the comms and shook her head. We're at 42% fuel reserves, sir. If we push another 6 hours, we won't have enough to make it back to the carrier. Obey the order, Vrak growled, slamming his fist on the console. The Admiral does not tolerate failure. 3 decks below, Dominion deckhand Jorek scraped dried nutrient paste off his mess tray as the red alert blared for the 3rd time that shift. His bunkmate leaned against the bulkhead, rubbing grit out of his eyes. Another sweep update came through, the bunkmate said. They're chasing another ghost ping, 3rd one this week, Jorek grunted, tossing the scraped paste into the recycler. I heard the last patrol that went dark ran out of fuel, had to be towed back by a salvage tug. The Admiral's got us burning through half our reserves chasing shadows. Shut it, the bunkmate warned, nodding at the passing rating who was already glancing over his shoulder. You'll get posted to the bombardment wing for talking like that. On the Resolute's bridge, Holt leaned over the tactical display, the long-range spy drone feed from the Dominion fleet's outer perimeter playing across the main screen. The feed showed 12 Dominion patrol wings and 8 destroyers peeling off their screening positions to stream toward the Uwit cloud, exactly as the human decoy plan had predicted. Confirmed, Holt said, his voice steady, no trace of the urgency the data warranted. Karvek just pulled 70% of his screen to chase the last decoy buoy. His support echelon ammo, fuel, repair ships is only guarded by 4 corvettes. That's our window. Reyes stood at his shoulder, her voice as cold as the void outside the viewports. Strike team is in position. Voss's squadron is holding at the edge of the radiation belt, Holt confirmed. But her lead engineer just flagged a problem with the Nightfall's phase cloak injector. If they push above 0.7 feet across the gap, the cloak will fail. They'll be visible for 11 minutes before they reach the support echelon. There was a pause, then Holt keyed the comms to the Nightfall. Voss, this is Holt, you have a go. The Dominion's screen destroyers are 13 minutes out from turning back. You make the run, or we lose the entire operation. Countdown hits 0, they glass every human colony in the outer rim. Commander Mara Voss's face appeared on the bridge screen, her jaw set, no trace of fear. Understood, sir. Nightfall actual, accelerate to 0.75 C. All hands brace for cloak stress. On the Nightfall's bridge, Ensign Kale ran a final diagnostic on the cloak array, his fingers flying across the keypad. The hum of the drive spiked as the ship picked up speed, the lights flickering once as the cloak buffer strained. Cloak holding, Kale called out, his voice calm. Injector temp at 92% and rising. We've got 8 minutes before we hit critical. Hold course, Voss ordered, her eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the Dominion support echelon growing larger by the second. Helm, adjust heading 0.2 degrees port to avoid the radiation flare. Weapons, power up torpedoes. Target the ammo depots first, then the fuel tanks. No survivors. Back on the Resolute, Holt watched the feed as the human stealth frigate slipped through the gap in the Dominion screen, invisible to the enemy's short-range sensors. A Dominion corvette patrolling the support echelon's perimeter picked up a faint power spike for half a second, its commander writing it off as a sensor glitch from the nearby gas giant's radiation belt. The countdown ticked, 37 hours, 12 minutes. Vrak's patrol wing, low on fuel, turned back toward the main fleet, their sensors still picking up the faint residual signature of the human decoy. They were 12 minutes too late to stop the strike. Holt leaned back in his command chair, a faint, cold smile touching his lips. "Let them burn," he murmured, just loud enough for Reyes to hear. "By the time they realize what's happening, they'll have nothing left to fight with." The Nightfall and its squadron were 4 minutes out from the Dominion support echelon, their torpedoes armed, their cloaks holding. The Dominion's main fleet was still scrambling, their commanders shouting contradictory orders, their arrogance finally cracking under the weight of the unseen blade hanging over their throats. The Nightfall's hull thrummed faintly as it cut through the radiation belt of the system's gas giant, 4 minutes out from the Dominion support echelon. Captain Voss stood at tactical, her gloved fingers tapping a steady, unreadable rhythm on the console as cloak efficiency held at 98%, the system's natural radiation masking the frigate's power signature better than any electronic countermeasure could. "Incoming sensor sweep from a Krell fighter patrol, 20 clicks off our port bow, Tactical Officer LT. Kale said, his voice flat, no hint of the tension coiled in his shoulders. "Passive scan only, they're holding." Voss didn't flinch. "Keep us on course. If they ping us, we're already inside their effective weapons range." On the Dominion side of the system, High Marshal Vorek paced the command deck of his flagship, the Hegemony's support echelon sprawling 200 clicks behind him, crammed with plasma shells, fusion fuel rods, and spare parts for the 120 battleship main fleet. His sensor officer had just relayed a report from a patrol wing claiming a possible human frigate signature near the gas giant's edge, and Vorek had laughed it off. "Humans can't sneak past our outer screen," he'd barked, slamming his fist on the console so hard a row of indicator lights flickered. "Their entire fleet is hiding behind that moon, cowering while we crush their decoy force. Stop wasting my time with sensor glitches." The Krell fighter pilot who'd picked up the faint signature swept past the Nightfall's position a second later, his sensors flashing a temporary blip before the radiation belt washed it out. He muttered a curse into his comms, blaming a faulty long-range array, and swung his fighter back toward the main fleet's flank to engage the human drone swarms that were harassing their picket ships. 3 minutes out, Po Wen-chen called from weapons, his fingers hovering over the launch key. Torpedoes armed, targeting solutions locked on all 3 ammo depots and both fuel tank farms. "No collateral damage to the main fleet's capital ships per your order." "Good," Voss said. "Point defense systems to hot. Any escape pods or comms buoys that try to get a signal off, take them out. No survivors." The countdown ticked down on the main display, 2:17. Holt's voice crackled over the fleet comms, calm as ever, from the Resolute 50 clicks out. "All squadrons report in position. Diversionary force is engaging the Hegemony's left flank, drawing 80% of their screen's attention." "You're clear." The Nightfall's helm petty officer Diaz adjusted the frigate's heading a hair to avoid a pocket of ionized gas, the ship's cloak flaring for half a second before stabilizing. A Dominion corvette patrolling the support echelon's outer perimeter picked up the power spike, its commander frowning at the readout before writing it off as another radiation glitch. He didn't bother to report it. 30 seconds, Kale said. The bridge went quiet, the only sound the low thrum of the engines, and the soft beep of the targeting computer, locking onto the final coordinates. Voss nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the support echelon's silhouette growing larger by the second. Fire. 12 low-yield, high-penetration torpedoes slid out of the Nightfall's launch tubes, their own microcloaks masking their propulsion as they coasted toward the target at 20,000 clicks per hour. The first struck the lead ammo depot's hull 18 seconds later, punching through the outer plating before detonating deep in the magazine. The explosion was silent at first, then a blinding white flash rolled across the tactical display as the entire depot blew, shrapnel tearing through the adjacent fuel tank farm. The chain reaction was immediate. The second and third depots went up in rapid succession, the fireball expanding to swallow 40% of the support echelon in 10 seconds. The hegemony's capital ships orbiting 500 clicks out rocked from the shockwave, their sensors blinded by the radiation burst. Target destroyed, Chen said, no triumph in his voice, just professional satisfaction. No surviving signatures in the support echelon zone. Helm set course for rendezvous point Delta, full burn, Voss ordered, already turning back to the tactical display to monitor the rest of the squadron's attacks. Weapons, stand down from alert, but keep point defense hot. The Hegemony is going to be scrambling for anyone who can fire back. On the Hegemony flagship, Vorex stared at his tactical display in disbelief as the support echelon's signature faded to nothing. His fleet's fuel reserves were at 60%, enough for one more short engagement, but the ammo depots had held 90% of their plasma shells. Without resupply, his 120 battleships were little more than floating targets against the human fleet's remaining stealth frigates and cruisers. "Turn the fleet around," he screamed, slamming his fist on the console so hard the screen cracked. "Find those human stealth ships, destroy them all." His order was cut off as a human torpedo slammed into the flagship's port side, the diversionary strike force having slipped past the distracted screen. The ship rocked, alarms blaring, as Vorek realized too late that the humans hadn't been cowering at all. They'd been waiting for him to hand them the win. On the Resolute, Holt watched the support echelon's explosion bloom on the main display, the faint, cold smile still touching his lips. He turned to Reyes, who was already typing the after-action report into his console. "Tell command the first domino fell," he said, his voice low, cutting through the hum of the bridge. "The Hegemony's main fleet is dead in the water. We move to Phase 2 in 12 hours. The tactical display on the Resolute's bridge glowed with the faint blue signatures of the 27 remaining stealth frigates and two sister cruisers tucked in the shadow of the system's outer asteroid belt, their emissions masked by pockets of radioactive ore that scrambled long-range sensors. Holt's grip on his command chair arm was tight enough to whiten his knuckles, but his voice was flat, cutting through the low hum of the bridge's life support as he keyed the fleet-wide comms. "All units maintain radio silence. Weapons, keep point defense at 80% capacity. We don't engage unless they fire first. Vorek's fleet is dead in the water, and we let him sweat for the next 12 hours. A ping cut him off, the identifier for Frigate Squadron 7's commander, Lieutenant Jax Voss, popping up on his console. Voss's voice was rough, the static of his stealth frigate's masked comms crackling through the speaker. "Resolute Voss, 3 Hegemony destroyers just peeled off the main line, heading for the support echelon debris. Looks like they're trying to recover black boxes. Request permission to light them up." Holt shook his head, even though Voss couldn't see him. "Hold fire, let them get within 100 clicks of the debris. We don't spook the rest of the herd yet." On the Hegemony's fist, Vorek's flagship, the bridge reeked of burnt insulation and med-droid antiseptic. A gash on his forehead was stitched shut, the edges still oozing faint blue Hegemony blood, and the tactical display in front of him showed nothing but empty space where the human ships had vanished. His weapons officer's tentacles twitched as he read the readout, his voice tight. "All main plasma batteries are offline, High Commander. 92% of our heavy ordnance was expended on the support echelon strike. We have 210 close-in railguns and point defense lasers operational, maximum effective range 500 clicks. No long-range fire capability." Vorek slammed his fist into the console again, the cracked screen flickering. "Launch all available fighter wings, sweep the asteroid belt, draw those cowardly humans out. I want every stealth ship they have burning before their reinforcements arrive." The comms officer flinched. "Sir, the human electronic warfare suite is jamming all long-range fighter comms. Wings will have to operate independently, no coordination." "Send them anyway," Vorek roared. "Every pilot that finds a human ship dies with it. I will not be made a fool of by a species that hides in the rocks." 4 hours later, the 3 Hegemony destroyers were 120 clicks from the debris field, their sensors scanning the wreckage for recoverable tech. Holt nodded at Reyes, who tapped his console twice. The destroyers didn't even have time to signal each other before proximity mines planted by Voss's squadron 3 days prior detonated along their hulls, tearing them apart in silent, flaring explosions that lit up the tactical display. Vorek's enraged scream came over the open fleet channel a second later, broadcast to every Hegemony ship in the system. "You think hidden mines will save you, humans? I will burn every one of your ships to ash and hang your corpses from the hull of my flagship as trophies." Holt smirked, leaning forward in his chair. "Intelligence, patch that transmission to every Hegemony ship in the system. Let them hear their commander lose his temper before we drop the hammer." The intelligence officer's head snapped up, his eyes wide. Sir, the hegemony reinforcement fleet just dropped out of FTL at the system edge. Signature matches 40 dreadnoughts, 80 cruisers, 200 destroyers. They picked up the support echelon's distress beacon, are charging at full burn. The bridge went quiet for 3 seconds. Reyes broke the silence, his voice tight. That's 3 times the size of Vorek's remaining fleet. We're outgunned if they get here. Holt shook his head, his cold smile settling back into place. Not if we hit their FTL drives before they fully exit jump. All stealth units launch full torpedo spreads. Target lead dreadnought drive cores first. We cut off their retreat, then pick them off one by one. Phase 2 starts now. On the Nightshade, Jax Voss watched the torpedo trails streak out from the asteroid belt, invisible to the hegemony reinforcement fleet's sensors until they were 10 clicks out. His weapons officer, Ensign Rhea Tech, grinned as she watched the targeting reticles lock onto the lead dreadnought's FTL drive housing. Torpedoes away, sir. ETA to impact 2 minutes 47 seconds. Their point defense is still scrambling. They don't know we're here. Good, Voss said, leaning back in his chair. Once those drives are dead, target their comms arrays first. Cut off their command, then take out their weapons. No quarter. They came to our system to slaughter our colonies. We send them back as debris for the vultures. Rhea nodded, her fingers flying over her console. Aye, sir. First blood for the squadron. Holt watched the torpedo trails on the Resolute's display, the faint glows of the hegemony dreadnoughts' signatures growing closer. Vorek was still screaming orders on the open channel, unaware that the human fleet hadn't been cowering at all. They'd been waiting for his reinforcements to arrive, right into the kill box. The hegemony had come to the void expecting an easy conquest, their arrogance blinding them to the fact that humans didn't fight by the rules of interstellar war. They fought to win, no matter the cost, and the first domino had already fallen. The torpedo launch timer on Nightshade's weapons console ticked down to 2 minutes 12 seconds when Ensign Tech's fingers flew across her board, fine-tuning the salvo's approach vectors. Adjusted for the lead dreadnought's current drift, sir. Second salvo is locked on the Scourge of Kale's FTL housing. No countermeasure launches detected yet. Their point defense crews are still focused on clearing debris from the first explosion's shockwave. Jax Voss leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the tactical display where the glowing red icons of the Hegemony Task Force glowed against the black of the void. The Wrath of Xyler, the 2.1-kilometer lead dreadnought Vorek, had been screaming orders from 10 minutes prior, was already listing 12 degrees to port, its rear third sheared off by the first torpedo hit. Hold fire on the secondary batteries until the second salvo impacts. Don't tip our hand on the destroyer wing hiding in the asteroid field's western edge. We take out the second drive core, then cut their comms before they can reorganize. On the Wrath of Xyler's bridge, alarms blared so loud Vorek's second-in-command had to shout over them to be heard. The Hegemony commander's golden ceremonial armor was smudged with coolant spray from a ruptured conduit near the command pit, his usual arrogant snarl twisted into a rictus of panic. Evasive maneuvers. All point defense clusters target the incoming ordnance. He slammed his fist onto the comms console, screaming for the escort cruisers flanking his ship to form a defensive screen. The console only spat static back at him. The first torpedo's proximity blast had fried the flagship's long-range comms array. Sir, the second salvo is inbound, a sensor officer yelled, his voice cracking. ETA 90 seconds. They're coming from the nebula cloud we thought was empty of human signatures. Vorek's blood ran cold. The humans hadn't been cowering in the asteroid belt at all. They'd lured his entire reinforcement fleet into the kill zone, hidden half their capital ships in the ion storm of the nearby nebula, where hegemony sensors couldn't pick up their signatures. His arrogance had cost him the element of surprise before the first shot had even been fired. On the Resolute, Holt watched the Wrath of Xyler's signature flicker and dim on his tactical display as the human fleet poured out of the nebula's cover. 8 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, all holding formation as they advanced on the disorganized hegemony line. All units engage priority targets, he said, his voice calm over the open fleet channel, no trace of the rage he'd felt when the hegemony first bombarded the outer colony outposts 3 weeks prior. Dreadnought drive cores first, then comms, then weapons, no quarter. They came to our system to slaughter 12 million civilians. We send them back as debris for the vultures. Fire at will. The first volley of human railgun rounds streaked across the void, slamming into the unshielded rear of the Scourge of Kale before its point defense could spin up. The hegemony dreadnought shuddered, its forward missile bays sheared off by a direct hit from a Resolute-class heavy cruiser's main battery. First salvo on target, Rhea called out, her fingers already inputting the firing solution for the second torpedo wave. Scourge's shields are down 40%, drive core exposed. Torpedoes away, ETA to impact 2 minutes 10 seconds. Their escorts are trying to reposition, but the destroyer wing is already on them. A burst of static cut through the bridge comms as Vorak's broken signal finally broke through the interference. Retreat. All units fall back to the crack, the jump point. I repeat, fall back. The signal cut out mid-sentence as a human destroyer's railgun round slammed into the Wrath of Xyler's remaining operational bridge, silencing the hegemony commander for good. Voss didn't react to the transmission. He only nodded at Rhea when she gave him a thumbs up, her grin sharp and cold. Mark the third dreadnought once the second salvo hits. We don't stop until every one of those bastards is drifting scrap in the void. He flicked a glance at the side console displaying the civilian evacuation convoy's progress. They were 12 minutes out from the safe jump point, still 30 clicks from the edge of the hegemony's initial bombardment range. As long as his squadron held the hegemony fleet here, they'd make it out. The second torpedo salvo streaked toward the Scourge of Kale, its warheads glowing faintly as they crossed the 80 clicks of empty space between the human fleet and the crippled hegemony flagship. On the Scourge's bridge, the new acting commander screamed for point defense to fire, but it was too late. The torpedoes were already in terminal phase, their guidance systems locked unshakable onto the dreadnought's exposed FTL core. The torpedoes punched through the Scourge of Kale's degraded point defense grid 1.2 seconds before impact, their shaped charges detonating directly against the dreadnought's exposed FTL core. There was no fireball, no dramatic hull breach, just a silent, blinding blue pulse as the core's containment failed, followed by a gut-wrenching groan of twisting durasteel as the 2.4-kilometer hull split along pre-existing stress fractures from earlier railgun hits. Molten alloy sprayed into the void in glittering tendrils, and the entire ship folded in on itself before fragments scattered across a 10-click radius. No escape pods launched, no survivors. Kill confirmed, Rhea said, her voice flat as she tapped the targeting console, the green pips for the Scourge of Kale vanishing from the fleet display. Second dreadnought is scrapped, third still breathing, but its command is gone after Vorak's bridge got wiped. Voss didn't acknowledge the kill immediately. His eyes were locked on the Wrath of Xyler, the remaining hegemony flagship, its main gun turrets swiveling toward the civilian convoy's designated jump exit 120 clicks out. The ship's FTL capacitors were still charging, but its conventional plasma batteries were fully operational, and its targeting solution locked in 12 seconds. All destroyers prioritize suppressing Wrath of Xyler's forward turrets, Voss ordered, his tone sharp, no wasted words. Do not let it get a shot off on the convoy. Frigate wing, intercept any escorts breaking formation. As if on cue, 3 hegemony corvettes peeled away from their damaged escort screen, their engines flaring bright blue as they burned hard for the convoy's flank. A spread of 12 anti-ship torpedoes launched from their tubes, streaking toward the unarmored civilian transports. Point defense on Revenant, engage those torps, Voss barked. The destroyer's CIWS batteries lit up, tracers stitching across the void, taking out 8 of the incoming warheads. The remaining 4 slipped through, arcing toward the lead evacuation transport. Frigate wing ETA to intercept, 47 seconds, Rhea called out, her fingers flying across her console as she routed targeting data to the approaching frigates. Convoy point defense is only 70% operational, they won't stop all of them. The Wrath of Xyler fired first. 2 1200 plasma rounds screamed across the distance, glowing orange, aimed directly at the lead transport's engineering section. Voss didn't hesitate. Vanguard, take the hit. Align shields to port. The destroyer HMS Vanguard burned hard to interpose itself between the plasma rounds and the convoy, its forward shields flaring bright gold as the impact slammed into it. The ship shuddered, alarms blaring across its bridge, but the shields held at 62% capacity. Voss caught the damage report flash across his console. 3 minor casualties, no critical system damage. The frigate wing arrived a second later, their railguns spitting tungsten rounds that detonated the remaining 4 torpedoes 2.3 clicks from the convoy, the shockwave rattling the transport hulls but causing no permanent damage. Wrath of Xyler's core is exposed, Rhea said, a sharp edge to her voice. It dumped all its remaining FTL charge into the main gun capacitors to fire that salvo. Core integrity is at 18%. Mark it, Voss said, a faint nod. Fire the third torpedo salvo, ETA to impact, 1 minute 58 seconds. Good, don't let any escorts get close to the convoy, those corvettes are still out there. The third salvo streaked across the void, its warheads locked unshakably onto the Wrath of Xyler's failing core. The dreadnought's skeleton crew tried to vent the core's remaining energy, tried to maneuver, but it was too slow. The torpedoes hit with the same silent, brutal efficiency as the first 2, and the Wrath of Xyler crumpled, its hull shearing apart as the core cascade consumed it, fragments drifting into the void to join the remains of the Scourge of Kale. The remaining hegemony escorts broke formation immediately, some burning hard for the outer system, others attempting to jump out. The human fighter wing, which had been holding position, poured into the gap, their plasma cannons tearing into the corvette's engines, picking them off one by one. Voss tapped the fleet comms. All units fall back to the convoy's jump point. Escort the evacuees through, then we jump out. We're done here. He pulled up the convoy's progress report, 1.2 clicks from the jump point. All transports accounted for no critical damage. The 12-minute hold had stretched to 17, but they'd made it. Rhea leaned back in her chair, wiping sweat from her forehead, and held out a metal ration bar. That was closer than I liked. Those corvettes almost got a torp through. Voss took it, broke it in half, handed half back. They almost did. Good shooting on the point defense teams. He glanced at the tactical display, where the last of the hegemony escorts went up in a small, quiet explosion. Next ops in 6 hours. Get the crews rested. Dismissed. Chapter 12, Episode 18, Shadows in the Void. Humanity's stealth duel against the alien Armada ASF. The convoy's drives flared, streaks of blue iron wash cutting across the black. The jump point loomed ahead, a shimmering distortion in the void, the only exit from this slaughterhouse of a system. Human warships formed a protective shell around the transports, their hulls scarred but intact. The tactical board showed the last hostile contact fading, no more hegemony signatures within strike range. For the first time in 17 minutes, silence reigned. Voss stood at the center of the command deck, hands clasped behind his back. His voice carried the same calm weight it had during the fight. Status: convoy entering jump corridor, Rhea reported, her tone clipped, professional. All drives stable, no stragglers. Fleet, Voss pressed, 2 frigates with hull breaches but containment holding. Fighter wing down by 12%, no capital losses. She paused, then added, we're bloodied but functional. Voss nodded once. Good, keep the formation tight until the last transport clears. The crew moved with mechanical precision, no wasted motion. They had learned the rhythm of survival against the hegemony: strike fast, vanish faster. The wrath of Xyler's destruction had been a message, but Voss knew the enemy would not interpret it as surrender. They would see it as humiliation, and humiliation bred vengeance. On the far edge of the system, fragments of alien dreadnoughts drifted like broken monuments. The wrath of Xyler's core detonation had carved a scar across the void, a reminder of human ingenuity and ruthlessness. The hegemony had underestimated them again. They had believed stealth was a coward's weapon, not realizing it was humanity's scalpel, cutting empires apart one artery at a time. Sir, Rhea said quietly, leaning closer, intercepted chatter from the fleeing escorts. They're broadcasting distress signals to the nearest hegemony relay. Reinforcements will know exactly what happened here. Voss's jaw tightened. Let them. By the time reinforcements arrive, we'll be gone, and they'll be staring at wreckage. The jump point rippled as the first transport vanished into the corridor. The distortion swallowed it whole, leaving only a fading afterglow. One by one, the convoy disappeared, each ship carrying thousands of evacuees, scientists, engineers, families, humanity's fragile lifeblood. Every second mattered. Every second was another chance for the hegemony to regroup. Convoy clear, Rhea confirmed. Last transport through. Voss tapped the comms. All combat units disengage, prepare for jump. The fleet pivoted with disciplined grace, drives igniting in synchronized bursts. The void seemed to hold its breath. Then, as the flagship's prow touched the corridor's edge, alarms flared. Contact, shouted the sensor officer. Multiple signatures, vector inbound from the outer system. Fast movers, not escorts, heavy tonnage. The tactical display lit up with crimson icons. A new wave of hegemony warships, larger than the corvettes, closing fast. Their arrival was late but lethal. If they reached the corridor before the fleet jumped, the convoy's survival would mean nothing. Rhea's hands flew across her console. Estimate 6 cruisers, 2 carriers, 30 minutes out, but they're burning hard. The crew stiffened. 30 minutes was too close for comfort, too close for error. Voss's voice cut through the tension. Options: hold corridor by time, Rhea said, but we'll be outgunned. They'll pin us before we can jump. Or, the tactical officer interjected, we jump now, leave the system before they arrive, but that means no pursuit, no cleanup. They'll know we were here. Voss studied the board. The decision was brutal but clear. We jump. Humanity doesn't win by standing toe-to-toe. We win by surviving. The fleet aligned, drives humming at full resonance. The corridor shimmered brighter, its gravitational throat widening to swallow steel and fire. One by one, human warships slipped into the distortion, their silhouettes dissolving into nothingness. The flagship held position until the last frigate cleared. Jump drive primed, Rhea said. Coordinates locked. Voss gave a single nod. Execute. The void folded. The flagship vanished. Silence returned to the battlefield. Only wreckage remained, alien dreadnoughts torn apart, corvettes drifting lifeless, fragments of empire scattered like ash. The hegemony reinforcements would arrive to find nothing but ghosts. Humanity had struck, survived, and disappeared once more into the shadows. On the other side of the corridor, the fleet emerged into a new system. Stars burned cold and distant, unfamiliar constellations stretching across the black. The convoy reassembled, transports forming tight clusters, warships circling like predators guarding prey. Rhea exhaled, tension bleeding from her shoulders. We made it. Voss's gaze remained fixed on the tactical board, for now. He turned to the crew, his voice steady, unyielding. The hegemony will come harder next time. They'll throw fleets, carriers, entire armadas. They think we're prey. They think we're fragile. But every time they chase us, every time they blade, they learn the same lesson. Humanity doesn't fight fair. Humanity fights to win. The crew absorbed his words in silence, the weight of them settling like steel. They had survived another duel in the void. They had carved another scar into the arrogance of empires, and they would do it again. Far beyond the stars, the hegemony's high command would rage at the loss of 2 dreadnoughts. They would vow vengeance, promise annihilation. But vengeance was slow, and annihilation required certainty. Humanity offered neither. Humanity offered shadows, traps, and knives in the dark. The war was not over, it had only begun. Voss stepped back from the command dais, his voice low but resolute. 6 hours, crews rest, ships refit, then we move again. The void doesn't wait, and neither do we. The fleet sailed deeper into the unknown, shadows trailing behind them, the duel far from finished.